Yo, what up guys, it's Flark, and welcome to my pre-patch guides and Shadowlands discussion videos for Frost and Unholy. Of course, this is the Frost version you're watching now. I made the Unholy one first, so I recommend that you actually watch that one first, especially if you're just a DK enthusiast at all. Even if you really just want to play Frost, I think it's good to have a well-rounded knowledge of the class as a whole, and it might change how you look at the class for Shadowlands and pre-patch in some way. But of course, we're going to be going over all of the pre-patch build stuff, the traits, the itemization, the talents, the PvP talents, the Runeforges, the playstyle, the changes, to help you guys get the most powerful build for Frost, for any type of PvP that you want to play in pre-patch. Since pre-patch is going to be much longer now, as Shadowlands was delayed. It's just really valuable to have a fun build that you love playing, so you can go in there and get some new achievements or nuke somebody in this weird pre-season, post-season, in-between season bonanza. And at the end of it, of course, I'll talk a little bit about Shadowlands and how I feel the spec and the class will be, and what comps you might play, and some other information that people have always been asking me about Shadowlands and what I think about it. So, you guys have heavily requested this set of videos, and I'm finally getting it out. I'm really happy for that. I have played a ton of twos coaching games, and we have regularly gotten people to 2200 from strictly double DPS, and they have no experience. So it could be like 1v2s to 2200. So these builds are obviously working extremely well. I've played both Frost and Unholy and had success with both. And of course, my Corrupted Gladiator title did come in from last season, which was as Frost, the 3323 that we got last season, Windwalker DKR Druid. That was a lot of fun, and I'm going to try and take that theorycraft and bring it into the next Shadowlands expansion so I can give you guys some more insight for years to come. So, obviously, without any more blabber, let's get into the Frost one. This is starting off with, and the timestamps are going to be down below, so if there's anything you want to skip to, feel free. We're going to start with itemization, though. We talked about this in the Unholy one. Again, I recommend that you watch that first, because going to move right along here. Stats in Shadowlands and pre-patch are not what they used to be. 1. Diminishing returns on secondary stats above a certain level. So the more of it you have, the worse of it you get. That's huge. 2. Certain stats got more value as a result of them changing how the class works. For example, in Holy, they literally just changed Mastery to give you more pet damage when you use it, or when you have it. That's just an inherent change. With Frost, your Mastery got better for multiple reasons. There's no corruptions making you do a ton of gushing wounds damage, which don't scale with your Mastery at all, or Breath of the Dying being over the top, which doesn't scale with your Mastery at all. There's less of those immediate borrowed and powered effects, and more of the damage is built into your actual class. And your class does Frost damage, and Frost damage is what your Mastery increases. Your Mastery becomes a lot better as a result. Of course, you also get this bad boy. Your next Obliterate also deals Frost damage. That is huge upfront damage when we get that, and also extremely increases the value of Mastery, as well as this Bouncing Snowball right here that I used for an entirety of a rank 1 push. It does an enormous amount of damage still, and scales with your Mastery, of course, to definitively snowball Frost damage. So, that said, those types of things add to the fact that Haste and Verse were already good PvP stats, because they have, versatility is just a good PvP stat. Gives you survivability and gives you damage. It's the overarching key general use PvP stat. But Haste does very similar things. It gives you survivability because you have faster rune generation and faster globals, allowing you to get more death strikes off, allowing you to get more runic power for more death strikes in the first place. But it also increases damage because runes contribute to damage, auto attack swings contribute to damage. That's all well and good. But one final thing comes up, and that's the synergy between stats. With all those stats having value now, bringing the other stats up in value, and giving it different types of value. Like before, Frost Fever was your Mastery, and Remorseless Winter was your Mastery. And those things didn't scale with Haste very well, or at all in the case of Frost Fever. But Obliterate doing Frost damage does scale with Haste, because the more Haste, the more obliterates. The more haste, the more obliterate procs. That means you're getting more of these killing machines, and you're doing more of them because you have faster globals and more runes, which means you're getting more of that killing machine does frost damage ability, which means you're getting more use out of your mastery, and that's called stat synergy, right? The more mastery you have, the better value your haste is. The more haste you have, the better value your mastery is, which means you want all 3 stats. You want all 3 stats, even crit in this case. I talked on Holy how that was a trash stat. You wouldn't want it. It's the only one you didn't want. You wanted the other 3. But because crit gives you those killing machines and effectively enables your obliterate to do frost damage, sure, the crit itself isn't as high output as mastery, but having the crit give you killing machine procs and thus enable your mastery makes crit better as well. So as Frost, you will literally go all 4 stats, which means what are you looking for? The proper borrowed powered stuff from your either right now Azerite Traits or Essences, or in the future Legendaries and Covenants. And you're also looking for sockets and high item level. That's a totally different change from BFA. BFA was all get the perfect 2 stats, and you don't really care about item level as much. Now it's like you really care about item level and sockets, and the stats, you kind of want a good mixture. It's totally different. It's totally weird. I wouldn't tell you, though, if it wasn't true. So, I would prioritize mastery a little bit over verse, and then a little bit over haste, and then a little bit over crit, but you would still want an even split. The only reason I have no crit at all is because I'm using my BFA gear. My BFA had no crit. So, it's kind of the way it goes. But that's the idea. That puts you into that mixed damage, split damage, many sources of damage mindset, where you can always have pressure and you can get those burst windows off, and you have enough haste to really milk those burst windows, but you have a lot of mastery. In Shadowlands Season 1, that's not going to matter because your secondary stats are all so low. But as Shadowlands moves on, you're getting more secondary stats on gear. When you get a mixture, it's going to feel really good. Totally different situation. Make sure to watch this a few times if you don't get it. All stats are good. I think crit is the lowest on that totem pole, and these 3 are still higher than crit, but all 3 of these work in conjunction very well. So, let's talk about Azerite Traits real quick, because it is pre-patch, and I promised I would give you a build for pre-patch so you could run in there and do some big damage in BGs or arenas or whatever the heck you're doing. Try and get some 3s achievements, because you can still get 2400 3s, get that achievement if you want. Here are the traits that I used all of BFA for my rank 1 push at that ending season, and that I think are extremely good. 1 Frozen Tempest for the crazy AoE pressure and for the Rhyme proc. Icy Citadel, very, very good sustained damage. Same thing here. Heart of Darkness gives great stats. The only other thing I would recommend if you have it is Frostwhelp's Indignation. So, Heart of Darkness, Icy Citadel, Frozen Tempest, at least 1 for sure, Frostwhelp's Indignation. Those traits add sustained damage, add burst damage. They're good frost traits. I used them for my 3300 push. I didn't swap off of them. This was my set the entire way through. They are good, sustained traits that contribute to their damage immensely. For the inners, you want to make sure you have the self-healers in Passive Visage, and you also need exactly 1 Runic Barrier. That's the same as it was before. Overwhelming Power is very good for haste generation, and On My Way is good for verse. But those are the types of things that you're looking for. The mages are more important, obviously, but get a Runic Barrier. Not going to talk too much about that anymore, because it's pretty set in stone by now. Those 4 traits, just look for them. If I talk too fast, just go back in the video, watch it again. Those 4 traits, very good. The system's going to be gone in Shadowlands anyway, so I'm not going to go too much more extensively on all the reasons why the other ones aren't as good. Who cares? They're not as good. Let's talk about Essences now. Essences is also a borrowed power system, and the last one we're going to be talking about this in the video. So I'm not, again, going to talk about the changes or for why each one is not as good or why each one could be good, because it's all going to be gone in Shadowlands. So instead I'm just going to give you the build that I run right now and why I run it. And let's start with the major. Blood of the Enemy. Blood of the Enemy is insane. It was insane before for chill streaks and for AoE burst and for just upfront damage and for using it in coordination with Dressed and now Frostworm's Fury. Wow. But they actually changed crit to be nerfed by 25% instead of 50%. So when you're talking an ability that was already extremely burst heavy, and they made it more burst heavy, and then the meta got even more burst heavy because people's slingshot and health rate has you get destroyed in burst windows. Blood of the Enemy, completely nuts. Just so good. It is so good, especially for Frost, which cleaves a lot and has chill streak. It is so good. For the minors, Conflict and Strife minor gives verse. You're going to use that. Essence of the Focusing Iris gives haste. You're going to use that. Then you saw me swap to Crucible. I was messing around with Breath just to make sure that there wasn't, because I theorycrafted a lot. Crucible is a must. I literally just confirmed that in my last session. It always does like 12 to 15% of your damage. It's overtuned. I don't know why. It doesn't matter. Numbers are numbers. It does so many numbers. It does so much high numbers. It is just overtuned. It does 10 to 15% of your damage. It's disgusting. It's overtuned. You don't need an explanation why something is overtuned, because it just means that the numbers coded into the system are too high. So, use this minor. It's non-negotiable. And that's actually it with Essences. Breath of the Dying, you'll see, is absent because I just replaced it, because Crucible just does more, and you don't need the Corruption Resistance anymore, because thank God that system is gone. Otherwise, these majors, Breath Major is fine, Condensed Life Force Major is fine, even Crucible Major is fine, Conflict Major is fine, but Blood of the Enemy is just so dominant, that is what I'm using. Again, this system is going to be gone in Shadowlands, so I just wanted to give you guys the build that I'm running right now that does ludicrous damage. Finally, we're going to talk about Trinkets. This is going pretty much the same way as my Unholy video, so if you watched both, I'm sorry, but it's the same exact thing. Dressagath, best trinket of the game, bar none. If it's best trinket of the game for Unholy, it's the best trinket of the game for Frost. It's even better because you Blood of the Enemy, you Chill Streak, and then they have to spread out. And the second they spread out because they're dying to Chill Streak, you dress them, boom, you get that single hit, and they just get nuked. You can even dress them while they're stacked if there's no pets there, because if they're both dying to Chill Streak and they're both dying to Frostworms and they're both dying to Blood, they might both die to Dressagath. You'll kill them both at the same time. I've literally done that on the stream. It's hysterical. It's super fun. And then, like I used for my entire threes push, and I talked about in the Unholy video, Insignia gives you verse, gives you primary stat. It's just a good on-proc trinket. No reason to use two on use right now because games go so fast you should be able to kill them with one, but that's good on-proc trinket. If you do not have Dressed, use Wheel, Remote Guidance Device, not as good, still does a ton of damage. Or Badge, Corrupted Gladiator's Badge from PvP, not as good, but gives you a lot of burst damage for your Chill Streak with that primary stat. If you don't have this proc trinket, if you have a different proc trinket that gives you stats, just use it. You guys know the drill. I've been talking about it all through BFA, and I talked about it in my Unholy video. So, Trinkets, Tresty Boy, Tier 1. Otherwise, use Badge and Wheel. Insignia, very, very good, but any proc trinket that gives stats as a stat stick, also very good. You can now use Gutikus as two-handed Frost, and now I have to talk about the elephant in the room, two-handed versus dual-wield. Obviously, two-handed is going to give you the higher obliterate damage from Might of the Frozen Wastes, and dual-wield gives you the extra Runeforge, enchant, and faster auto swings. So, which one are we going to play? I'm going to play two-handed Frost. When this passive comes into the game, that means the fact that you get 30% obliterate damage will be just another modifier on all the modifiers that apply to obliterate. First, frost damage scales with your mastery. Second, frost damage scales with necrotic ore. That's another 8%. Third, frost damage ignores armor. That's another 20 or 30%. Fourth, frost damage will scale with Might of the Frozen Wastes and the legendary. All those multipliers together, plus the two-handed frost bonus, is so much upfront damage that you might finally feel like pressing your abilities matters. I know people were thinking pre-patch was the time, they just wanted to try out two-handed frost, and they're like, finally I get two-handed frost. Might of the Frozen Wastes isn't what does that alone. Might of the Frozen Wastes is an extreme contributor to this right here. That passive, your next obliterate deals frost damage when killing machine. Combining that with a talent called Obliteration, we'll talk about later, is so impactful to the upfront damage, the big obliterates of two-handed frost. That is what you need. So right now, it's a pre-patch. You can play whatever you want. Dual-wield is probably better. The second this comes out, I'm going to be playing two-handed. As for now, if you play dual-wield, you can use stats. If you play two-handed, you can use stats. Gatiku's is not that important. Gatiku's was only very good with PvP scaling. PvP scaling dropped all your stats down. Gatiku didn't scale with your stats, which means everything else was doing less damage, but Gatiku was doing the same damage. So if everything is brought down, but Gatiku stays the same, then it's doing a higher portion of your overall damage. That's just why Gatiku's was so good. They took PvP scaling out, probably because Rextroy made 100 videos on it, and now Gatiku's isn't quite as good. It's certainly not the absolute necessity that it used to be. So you can use dual-wield with stats or two-handed with stats. As soon as this comes out, I'm running dual-wield. I'm running two-handed, rather. And that's all of the gear at all. That's all of it. That's all of it. That's all your traits. That's all your essences. That's all your stat weights. That's all your pieces. That's all your trinkets. That's what you need to gear your character to do big damage. That Drestigath Blood of the Enemy combo looks a little something like this. When you get all your stuff set up, you get your Rhyme proc, you pop Pillar, you build up some Pillar, and you throw out the Chill Streak and the Blood, and then the Frostworms and the Dressed, and you just shoot up. Obviously, Frostworms is nerfed in PvP, so it doesn't do that much damage, but those things all at the same time, the Blood, the Dressed, the Frostworms, the Chill Streak already bouncing, is actually some of the most shocking AoE burst in the game. And that is what building all of this on itemization will give you. Whew. That's just one section, boys. So now we're going to talk about talents. Frost talents, if you came from the Unholy video, or if you're watching this one first, now you'll know, Frost talents are way less changed than Unholy talents. On Unholy talents, everything was balanced, and I had to go over each talent individually. Frost talents? No. No. So let's go through. I'm going to go through each of the PVE talents and all the PvP talents and start one row at a time, tell you what I think about the row, and then which one I chose and why. We're going to start with this row. This entire row is garbage. Cold Heart is nerfed by 70% in PvP, and you're going to be chaining off targets to peel anyway, and then you're just throwing nerfed damage into an off target for no reason. Cold Heart is the worst thing ever. It could probably be unnerfed and still maybe be bad. I'm not sure yet. You could probably one-shot people like that, which is unhealthy for the game, but at least not 70% nerfed. Icy Talon's still pretty bad. Attack speed is not haste. The end. Attack speed is not haste. When you get kited, you lose this stack because you can't spend your runic power anymore. I guess you could Death Coil, and now you're spending runic power on Death Coil, which doesn't feel good unless you're healing yourself with it. So, just for attack speed, which is not haste, and attack speed is not that important. Icy Talons is bad. Inexorable's not that exciting, but it at least scales with your mastery and doing frost damage, and it stacks up when you're getting kited. So it's perfect for PvP. It's not going to be that big a source of your damage, but the other two talents are so inexcusably bad that you use Inexorable Soul. Total meme row. This row changed a tiny bit. Runic 10 is what I used through the entirety of BFA, but when we get this, and thus go into Obliteration, which I'm going to be talking about soon, Murderous Efficiency really adds a ton of burst damage to those windows, because you consume the Killing Machine effect, which is what you're getting for Obliteration, and there's that. We've been talking about it. That means each time you get those big obliterates, you're actually generating runes so you can get more. So this is immensely powerful in obliteration windows, extremely good for getting on-demand damage off, and is going to be an absolute powerful pick in that talent setup. Runic 10 will still be fine for dual wield and for sustained damage, and is fine right now. Generates a lot of runic power passively over the course of a game. That's good for survivability. It's good for burst. It's fine. This row is Asphyxiate versus Blind, like it's been for 5 years. Asphyxiate is very solid. It's a stun. It's a range stun. You can stun healers. It's really good with TSG when you stun an off healer and he Stormbolts the main target. Blinding Sleet is really good for AoE setups. It's very good for Grip, Blind, Leg Sweep from a Monk, or Grip, Blind, Chaos Nova from a Demon Hunter. It is fantastic because it gives you another setup global where you can grip them in, blind all three, press your Chill Streak. The Chill Streak will start bouncing between them, but the blind won't break until the chill streak bounces a couple times, and thus they will all be stuck in that area. Then you throw out the sweep, a global or a global and a half later, and you're just getting free setup and a longer duration burst window because of the ability of just the disorient, then break, then stun, then kill. It also now slows for 50% when it ends. That's just good. I mean, it wasn't that required because Chill Streak slowed by 70%, but now the target that it didn't bounce to will still get slowed, and that's just, why not? I mean, it's just a great addition to a talent that was already good for that reason, so now adding in that AoE slow is just powerful. It's kind of just comp dependent. If you play an AoE stun, setup, comp, run blind. If you don't, run as fix. This row, not that interesting either. You're going to notice a pattern here, unfortunately. And Holy had all the interesting talents. We're so unlucky. Avalanche, Frozen Pulse, both fine picks. Avalanche does pretty good burst damage, and you get a lot of Rhyme procs during obliteration windows. Again, you're going to hear that talent a lot. And you also get one for free from Frozen Tempest right now, which is still in the game for the end of Prepatch. Avalanche is good. Does good damage. It does good AoE damage. Does a fine portion of my damage. You could probably see it on the meter here. Let's take a look. I hate the Frost Fever that does that thing bug. There you go. So Avalanche is 3% of my damage. Frozen Pulse would have been about the same. That was only in the opener too. It would eventually get higher. Frozen Pulse, like I said, does about the same. You're never going to play around this. It says whenever you have fewer than 3 full runes, you're never going to play around that. It's going to do a very small amount of damage. It's just passive AoE noise. It's fine. Frost Scythe is not playable right now, but look out for if it's a melee meta cleave, and you combined it with Obliteration because it does 4 times the normal damage, and you have a ton of mastery. You don't even need crit chance, so you could just all-in mastery, no crit at all, and make a build where you Obliteration Frost Scythe during AoE burst windows and a sweep. Look out for that, I guess. But right now, you're probably not going to be playing it. This row got the same treatment Unholy did. Permafrost was the Stain general use talent. And then Death Pact was kind of like a polarizing meme that is sometimes really, really fine, and sometimes really, really trash. Right now it's really, really fine. Burst windows are very high, your health pools are low, which means you get nuked a lot, your health is very slingshotty, it's not like a sustained heal, go to dampening kind of meta. So Death Pact gets a lot better. The reason Death Pact is very bad in a self-healing sustained meta is because you don't really care about just having a burst heal and then immediately going back down in health because everybody's so sustained, and your own passive healing getting immuned by your own Death Pact. That is not a good thing. If the games go to dampening, it gets even worse, because Death Pact, the healing done by it, gets dampened. But the healing absorption does not, which means that the later in dampening, the more of a I lose button this becomes. But if the meta is very bursty, and you need an answer for burst, you need to spike back up after they try and one-shot you, Death Pact actually becomes very good. It was the exact same thing in BFA. My first BFA video I ever made said, hey, Death Pact is good, Permafrost sucks. And then my last one I made said, hey, Permafrost is great, Death Pact sucks. So that's how it is. It's polarizing, it's based on the meta, it will change drastically in meminess or viability from season to season. Right now it's fine. It's good. You can, if you see a red on the other team, probably take it. If you see a warrior, probably take it. If you see a Windwalker monk or a sub-rogue, take it. You need answers for those burst windows. Wraithwalk, same thing it's been for 5 years. It's mobility. You can choose it if you're like, there's a Frost Mage on the other team, and I have not been able to get to anybody, so, and I'm sick of it, so I want a Root Break. Here's your Root Break. It's on a 1 minute cooldown. That's not that great, but like I said, Frost talents are pretty uninspired. I'm a little frustrated by that, but it doesn't mean Frost is going to be bad. Wait till the end of the video to find out. I'm not trying to clickbait you. I'm just not going to talk about Shadowlands stuff until the end of the video. It does sound like... Anyway. This row is interesting, but not. Hyperthermic Presence is like the breath talent. It seems like it'd be really good because it says runic power cost of your abilities, which means it might be like Death Strike 2, so you could have like that and Transfusion and have like free Death Strikes and never die, and that could be a cool niche pick, but it doesn't. It doesn't reduce Death Strike. It only reduces Glacial Advance if it could, but it can't because it's on the same row. Frost Strike, which it can, and Breath, which it can. But you don't play Breath in PvP right now, and Frost Strike is not that important for just a 45-second cooldown, and that's all it really does. This is really the Breath talent, because it helps you sustain your breath very well, but we don't run that, so I don't really care. If it did Death Strike things, that would be kind of interesting. I think it works with Death Coil, but syncing up Hypothermic Presence and Lichborn for Death Coil heals when you're in trouble only one time does not feel like a good use of a talent. Glacial Advance applies Razor Ice. This could be very powerful, because it applies Razor Ice even if you're using a different Runeforge, and it does AoE damage, and it does ranged frost damage, like a ranged Frost Strike, so to speak. Very powerful. So on this line, Gathering Storm, good AoE damage, extends its duration, so good AoE damage and extends the AoE damage. And Glacial Advance, fine AoE damage, but applies Razor Ice, which is great for two-handed frost, and also a ranged Frost Strike, so to speak. So both of these are very good. I'm running Gathering Storm right now because Frozen Tempest is still in the game, and I have 2 of them, so my Remorseless Winter goes completely off. Third highest damage in a burst situation, that's competing with Frost Worms and Chill Streak, which are absurd burst abilities. So you know, after we got another Remorseless, this would go up to about 20%, because Remorseless would come off cooldown before Frost Worms does, or Chill Streak does. So you know that this would go up and up and up and up until it was the top damage. Gathering Storm is still very good. And this line. This is the traditional goofy frost line. Now they're all goofy frost lines, but this one's the traditional one. Ice Cap used to be a meme, and Obliteration used to be a meme, and Breath was really good, but it was nerfed in PvP, so it was a meme. And the whole thing was just like, well, what the fuck do you take? Right now, I think I take Ice Cap. When this passive is added to the game, I'm going to take Obliteration, for sure. So, right now, Obliteration does not give you this crazy frost damage, absurd armor piercing, mastery stacking, necrotic strike stacking upfront damage window, so it's not that interesting. But when it does, you pair it, like I said, with Murderous Efficiency, Obliteration, Murderous Efficiency, and you just nuke people in every pillar window. That is really good on-demand damage. That should be why Two-Handed Frost feels so good in Shadowlands. But it's not Shadowlands. I'm not level 58 yet right now. So the recently buffed Ice Cap to be 4 seconds is good enough for me. Breath is a meme. I know Mez used it in some crazy corruption one-shots and BFA Season 4. I think even he swapped off of that when I queued into him a few times. I never saw him doing those. He might have still done it at some point. But that was a very crazy corruption BFA Season 4 meme. I don't think it's very good for any other situation. In fact, the first time I ever talked about it, I said it's so much potential burst because it gives you a ton of runes in a burst situation. It gives you rune generation from spending your runic power for free. It would give you more obliterates. It could build your pillar and your remorseless very well. But it's only really good for those all-in playstyles, because otherwise it drains all your runic. You can't press Death Strike. If you get kited, you lose it. So it is just for all-in playstyles. So if I want to be thorough, look out for, if the game is so bursty and all-in is so important, look out for a Chill Streak, Breath, Hypothermic Presence with Necrotic Aura, spamming killing machines that you get from generating runes from Breath, all in one shot. Look out for that. Right now, I don't buy it, but I'm always cautious about those sort of things. Could be something that happens. Ice Cap is just Ice Cap. We know what it does. It's all passive. Whew. That's PVE Talents for you guys. Unfortunately, we have a lot of dead ones still. And our rows are not very inspired, unfortunately, either. They're more inspired for PvE. For PvP, we don't get one in Holy God, which was a huge amount of variety and diversity and interesting different builds you can make. In PvE, they get that. But I don't play PvE. It's really boring. So, that's what we're working with. You can see the talent list that I got right now. If you want to see my Two-Handed Frost prediction for Shadowlands, there. The end. That's all you would change. That's what I would run. You might do this, but I'm not sure about it yet. Go away. There you go. Go back to that part in the video, if you care. PvP talents. We talked about these for Unholy. They're about the same for Frost. I'm going to speed through them really quick. Chill Streak, best talent in the game, always run it. Heartstop Aura, best talent in the game, always run it. Which means you have just a variable third. And you know what? Actually, I skipped through that. I'm going to give it a little bit more attention, because we're going to talk about this in the Shadowlands portion of this video. Heartstop Aura is so destructively good that it is the reason that Frost is going to be good. BFA Season 4 Frost did not have very much on-demand damage. It mostly came from Gushing Wounds, and from Frost Fever. It did not burst hard with Obliterate or Frost Strike. Neither of those abilities really did any damage. It was just Chill Streak, Gushing Wounds, Frost Fever. Now we should have on-demand damage with that thing. That's going to give us on-demand damage with Obliteration, with Two-Handed Frost, Might of the Frozen Waste. So if we have on-demand damage and still have Heartstop, we are going to destroy. What made Heartstop so good? It makes it so it slows the game down for the enemy, but not for yourself, which means they are constantly falling behind on defensive cooldowns, on offensive cooldowns. They even lose cooldown recovery on their kick or any mobility that they have. They are falling behind in the trading of cooldowns, which is a lot of what this game is. So that single-handedly made Frost extremely hard to deal with in melee cleaves, because they win off of getting out your cooldowns and then doing things that you can't handle now, like Chill Streak goes, or AoE leg sweeps, or just a lot of sustained damage. So if something that was generally only killing you with passive damage before now has a way to kill you with on-demand damage, imagine them falling behind in defensive cooldowns, and then you using a pillar and having Obliteration and getting Obliterate. They don't have anything to trade with you, so you're just doing large upfront damage with Chill Streak go, and they don't have any defensives to trade with you. That is why Frost is good. We're going to talk about it in the Shadowlands portion, but as a sneak peek, Heartstop Aura is why Frost is good. If you ever change off this PvP talent for any reason, you have effectively made the cardinal sin, and I think I have to take your Frost DK away from you. I don't think you're allowed to play it anymore. You're not. I'm sorry. I don't make the rules. I did make the rule, but it's true. Chill Streak is the same way. You're never going to switch off Chill Streak for any reason. So much damage, 70% movement speed slow, and it's a 45-second cooldown. It's like, it's Frost. Frost is Chill Streak Heartstop. So you have a third PvP talent. Obviously, right now I'm running Necrotic Aura. Gives all your Frost damage more Frost damage. There are plenty of other good ones. Start at the bottom. Don't have Ancient Shadow. Use it against spell cleaves. Use it against mages. Use it against mage rogue. Use it against Ellies that one-shot you. Use it against wizards. If they have a caster, you're going to press Dome of the Ancient Shadow. Makes your AMZ 80% instead of 20%. It's a huge answer for cooldowns from casters. That's easy. Transfusion, if you're dying a lot against a jungle or something that's not AMZ, but you still find yourself dying, Transfusion generates runic power and reduces Death Strike. We know what it does. The generation is actually very notable because it always allows you to Death Strike, and it's off the global, so you can always transfuse and Death Strike at the same time. So it's essentially like, I need a Death Strike, press. If you don't have any runic, you're starved and you're about to die, you can just press. It's a good answer if you're getting trained. Cadaverous is the nichest pick of all time, but it's also a good answer if you're getting trained, specifically by a wizard who is not attacking your teammate. But in that case, it is a disgustingly good answer. What it does is it completely negates caster setups with any source of RNG, and if they have enough spells that they need to kill you with, then eventually you're probably going to get that proc that negates one of them, and because damage over time that can be dispelled because it's a disease is so much less threatening than a Chaos Bolt, Cadaverous over the course of the game stops so many setups passively that it becomes a near hard counter to wizards as long as they're just going you. That's a niche pick, but if you're saying that you're dying to spell cleaves all the time somehow, now you know what to pick. Dark Sim is super fun, high utility, steal poly, steal clone, steal Monk Bubble, super fun, extremely powerful if you are just looking for an answer to a comp and you want to try a very high awareness, high skill capability. Does wonders against mages and wonders against lock spamming fear. Just a great PvP talent. Delirium is that other niche pick that we always talk about called Hardstop Delir. We know about this. I'm going to go over it for the people who are new in Prepatch. It reduces movement enhancing abilities, but those are very specific and it's not all of them. To give you some examples, or actually to give you the examples, use it against Mage for Blink, especially now that they have the Blink that removes stuns, because that's what they'll probably be running. That's really good, because it reduces their Blink to such a long cooldown. They only have one Blink, they're just going to be face tanking you. Mages for Blink, Demon Hunters for Fel Rush, Monks for Roll. Hardstop Delirium completely shuts down their mobility. They can't move, you attack them. You're a big, strong Lich King DK. They can't get away from you. You're happy. There's good stuff. Death Chill is never found use. It's like interesting. It has an AoE root, but using 2 runes to root them with Chains of Ice and then Death Chill when Chains already is a 70% slow, and Root Breaks would then remove the Chains, so you'd have to spend another rune to then reapply Chains. Just not good enough. Grip Blind Sweep is so much better than Grip Death Chill anything. It breaks the damage. Death Chill is not good enough. And Necrotic we talked about. Use it when you're playing with a caster. Or if none of those other things are important to you at the moment, you just need a little bit of extra damage. Necrotic Aura does it. Do a brief moment to talk about Runeforges now. I was going to talk about it during itemization, but I wanted to do it in coordination with some of these PvP talents, which I learned from the Unholy video. So let me actually bring that up. Runeforges, added to the game. They're brand new, most of them, and they're really cool. Actually really, really cool. So let's talk about some of them and some of the synergies they have with some of these bad boys. First of all, the one that I'm using, oops, I shouldn't have done that, Rune of Sanguination. Rune of Sanguination, I play double DPS 2s. Rune of Sanguination heals you for 48% of your health. So in double DPS 2s, you're lacking a healer, and this is a 48% heal. Put 2 and 2 together. It's also extremely good for duels for that reason. It's also extremely good for self-sustain on a team that will go you. But you're like, so what if I queue into a team that will go me? Well, I can't go to the Runeforge now and go Deathgate out of there. I'm going to leave my teams behind. I'm going to lose the game. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get a bunch of weapons, and you're going to have to put a set of Runeforges on each one. And you're going to have to switch to that weapon in the lobby, not during the game, in the lobby, based on the comp, just like you do with your talents. How crazy is that? So why I wanted to work our wait in for a PvP talent section is because we have some synergies here. Rune of Sanguination and Transfusion. This is what I call the self-sustain setup. Rune of Sanguination makes you do more Death Strike damage. With Transfusions, you're going to be pressing a lot more Death Strikes. Rune of Sanguination heals you for a ton. Transfusion heals you for a ton. They both are chosen when you are the target. This package, this Sanguination Transfusion package, is extremely good self-sustain whenever you're the target. Perfect answer. Now we have Rune of Spell Warding, also a niche pick. What is that combined with? Either Zone or Cadaverous Pallor. That is the spell resist pick. So it's another package of PvP talent in Runeforge, where you'd switch to the weapon with Rune of Spell Warding, and you would grab Cadaverous Pallor, and now you become very, very anti-magic, especially with Anti-Magic Shell. You are very difficult to handle from wizards. If they're ever targeting you, you switch to this setup and you just become a non-target. It is very difficult for them to go through Spell Warding, Cadaverous, AMS, Death Strike. And you'd have still Small Zone. Or you can just run Big Zone and have an answer to Rot Cleaves, like Affliction S-Braced. Now, they don't rot as hard because you're so resistant. You have Zone, AMS, Spell Warding. That's your anti-magic package. For general use, you have Fallen Crusader and Razor Ice. Razor Ice for frost damage, for higher nuke potential. Fallen Crusader for all damage, for just more sustain and a little bit of more healing. This is the most general reuse possible. Strength increases all your damage. Healing is just good. Rune of the Fallen Crusader is the most general use. Razor Ice gives you burst windows that are more powerful because your burst is generally frost damage and Rune of Razor Ice increases your frost damage. So you have general use in Razor Ice, general use in Fallen Crusader, niche pick with spell warding that you can swap to a weapon with spell warding in the gate and maybe grab Cadaverous or Zone, niche pick with Sanguination where you would grab Transfusion. That's why I waited till now for the Runeforges, because I noticed that so many of them have crazy synergies with PvP talents, it was worth talking about them at the same time. Cool. That, my friends, gives you everything you need to know to build your character powerfully right now and practice your new Frost mechanics, your new Frost build, your new itemization, your new pre-patch game design with all of the gear that you would want, all of the talents that you would pick, and all the Runeforges you would mess around with. Pretty cool. We're going to wrap things up then with 2 segments. The new abilities that you got and what you're going to do with them, the new playstyle and new mechanics of your actual class abilities, and then my thoughts on Shadowlands. So let's talk about abilities. Frost got a couple of new toys. You got a Ghoul. There's nothing to say about it. It's off the global. It pet stuns automatically. You can see it doesn't give you a pet bar. And when it goes and attacks something, you have to attack something for it to attack because you don't have a pet bar. It's going to auto-use pet stun. So don't use it if you're worried about DRing them. It's going to do that. You don't have a pet toolkit. You see how there's no pet here? So it's going to auto-use pet stun. So don't try and use it if you're about to DR them. But it's off the global and then attacks them for what? A minute? So once you got that pet stun out of the way and it's a little pseudo interrupt, that's not bad. So let's say you already leg sweep them, then you press it. Then you pet stun them right after. So you're not worrying about setting up DR before a good go. You're resetting DR right after the good go. So it's like a pseudo interrupt on them. And then for a minute, it's just going to add damage, right? Just adds damage. Not that much, but it's off the global and it adds damage for a minute. So they have it in the game, whatever. The other amazing tool is Frostworm's Fury. This is heavily nerfed in PvP, but it doesn't matter if it's not a talent, because giving it to you for free is actually big. It adds free AoE damage, spike damage, no runic power cost, no rune cost, and a slow to a go. So when you're doing that chill streak go, with Blood of the Enemy now, but chill streak in Shadowlands, and you're bouncing back and you're getting AoE pressure and they're leg sweeped, and you got Remorseless down, you're firing off a Rhyme proc and you're just cleaving them to death. Right when your pillar is built up all the way, drop that Frostworm's Fury. It's just free damage. It's not crazy. It's nerfed in PvP. It's just free damage. So that looks a little bit like this. You get the pillar down, you got the Remorseless out. So now I'm building the pillar with Obliterates. Then Chill Streak starts bouncing. I got my blood dressed, and nuke him. Duke Nukem. There's a lot of free AoE damage. Just adds to every burst window. I built that pillar up. I spent those Obliterates to build it up. Then Chill Streak was bouncing. Pressed my blood dressed, and my Frostworms. And that's your AoE burst. It just adds free AoE burst. It's pretty neat. It's a cool talent. It's 50% slow too. Fine. It's for a long time, like 10 seconds, yeah. Chill Streak also slows them, but for 4 seconds. So if they get away from the Chill Streak, they might be still slowed from Frostworms. It's fine. The other tool you got is Lichborn, which is actually really cool, in that you can heal yourself behind a pillar, but it is trash compared to Unholies that gets both Death Coil procs, which allows you to heal for free, and then you can get a talent that increases the rate in which you get those Death Coil procs and allows you to store up another one, so it allows you to heal for free a lot. For Frost, it's not that important. Frost, you have just healing, where you can heal at a range or heal when they're ice blocked, which you generally couldn't do because you couldn't Death Strike into an ice block, or heal behind a pillar. It is just overall worse than Unholies in every way, but they gave it to you. It's an option. They're adding that stuff back to the game. So it's a shame that Unholy does get a little bit more survivability in that sense over us, but and theirs is very, very good, but it's still worth having on your bar with a self-cast macro. Like /cast, target equals yourself, Death Coil. Easiest macro to make in the world, right? /cast, target equals you, Death Coil. It's so simple. Finally, you got D&D. It pulls people out of stealth. That's all it does. There's literally no other reason for it. Look at the damage done. 39, man. Do not press that if you're trying to burst somebody until you get that Covenant that increases or makes you obliterate cleave. If that ends up being good, and we'll talk about Shadowlands after, but Death and Decay pulls people out of stealth. That's it. Very, very niche choices. Otherwise, you got really no new mechanics at all. That's it. That's what you got. So your playstyle is going to very, very much stay the same from BFA to Shadowlands. The only thing that should change is how much fun it is to press Obliterate when you get that ability and you use the Obliteration talent. It should actually be fun to press the ability again, because it should do enough upfront damage that you're like, wow, I pressed that ability. That is something that I did. Especially when you pair it with a little bit of extra damage from an Execrable. I feel like Obliterates are really doing something. And that's the playstyle changes. Not a lot. I'm not going to go over the rotation with you. It's very simple. So that is something I'm sure we got. But we'll now go into my thoughts on Shadowlands, which is the final topic for this set of videos. It's felt like it's been a long time coming. And people had a lot of questions. So first question, Frost versus Unholy. Frost is looking to be better in Shadowlands Season 1. Right now it seems very polarizing because Unholy seems a lot better in Prepatch. That is true. That is because you do not have this ability. You do not have your Legendary that increases it even further. You do not have your 52 ability that increases it even further. I mean, look at this. You're going to tell me that 20% plus 60% plus 8% plus ignoring armor 30%. The 8% came from Necrotic Aura, by the way. All of those modifiers don't matter to you at all. It's like, do 3 times more damage? Oh, doesn't matter. Those are the things that make it so good. These are the best rank ups, like out of any class that anybody's getting in Shadowlands. They are so impactful, and we're just not level 58 yet. We're not. I'm 50. My level is 50. It's not 58, so I don't have this. So coming in Shadowlands, that's going to change. We're going to get these things that are so impactful. And your stats are going to go down. So Unholy might feel a little sluggish. Frost gets a really good, a short cooldown now, Haste Generator, and Rune Generator, and already has pretty good Rune Generation from Runic Empowerment anyway. So it's not so worried about having low haste, but Unholy is, because Unholy is pretty sluggish without it and has a ton of setup globals. Our stuff came off the global. Pillar, Empower. No global cooldown. So when our stuff comes off the global and Holy stays on the global, that matters a lot when you guys have low haste at the start of an expansion. Right now we're not at the start of the expansion. This is my BFA gear and I'm level 50. So that is why it feels so polarizing. You don't have this and you still have that. But coming Shadowlands Season 1, I believe that Frost is going to be the best spec in the game. In fact, I'm going to go out on the limb that I generally don't go out on, and I'm going to say Frost is going to be one of the best specs in the game. Better than Unholy. I'm saying it conclusively. I think that I shouldn't say I think, because now I'm just covering with an opinion. Frost is going to be one of the best specs in the game in Shadowlands Season 1. It will be. It still has Heartstop Aura, like I mentioned. And that is like, when combined with any source of sustained pressure at all, the biggest back-breaking talent. I guess the only caveat is, if they nerf it, like they nerf Heartstop and then they nerf all of our abilities by 50%, I don't code the game, so I can't truly claim that anything is set in stone. I don't literally design World of Warcraft, so they could do whatever they want. They could just say, okay, well, Heartstop Aura is now 1% instead of 30%, right? So if they do crazy disruptive things, obviously my prediction is immediately false. But I believe that that won't happen. So, Two-Handed Frost, with those things that I talked about a trillion times now in this 1 hour long video, Shadowlands Season 1, Tier 1 spec, 2 thumbs up. Okay? It's going to be good. I'm going to play it. I'm going to try and get Sinful Glad. Good rank 1 title, sounds pretty cool. What else? What comps are we going to play for Shadowlands? TSG, Warrior DK. That's what that is. Windwalker DK still. Windwalkers are insane. We still love it. We still love Grip Sweep Chill Streak. It's still in the game. Adding Frost Fever to, or Frost Worms to that is just a nice touch. DH could still be good because it has an AoE Mortal Strike as well now, and still has Nova. But TSG and Windwalker DK I think are the safest bets. They are really tier 1. Destro DK was actually insane, and Legion Frost DK could make a little bit of a comeback. I'm not buying it. Without our amazing on-demand Remorseless Winter AoE stun, that was so good and so easy to work with in Legion, and so synergistic with everything that Destro had, I'm not sure it's quite as good. But just keep an eye out for that one. Windwalker DK and Warrior DK are looking to be good. Two-handed versus one-handed, I've covered a million times, but just to make sure nobody said that I didn't. I think two-handed is going to be better because of the upfront damage incorporated with this, and that. All of the modifiers to Obliterate. They could really, honestly, both be playable, but two-handed is what I'm going to choose to go with Shadowlands Season 1. I've been pretty high on it since it started, and I still think it's going to be good for all the reasons that I've said now 100 times. And I will prove it! I will prove it in Shadowlands Season 1. I know it looks tough in pre-patch because there's so much overpowered crap, but pre-patches are dumb, dude. Pre-patches suck. They are not indicative of the state of the game. They don't make any sense. I got like 2600 in Outlaw in the pre-patch before BFA because everything's just dumb. Things are not tuned properly. Things don't have the right health pools. You don't even have the abilities you're working to get. You don't have your borrowed power systems or your covenants or anything. So don't base it on that. Think about think logically about what's coming in Shadowlands. Think about how disruptive Heartstop War is in a longer paced game outside of pre-patch games. Think of how good Frost was in BFA Season 4, where it just blew up and everybody started playing it, and it just took people to new heights because you slowed down the enemy's potential so much. Think about that stuff, and then think about all you're getting in Shadowlands, and don't think about pre-patch because pre-patch is bugged. Essentially, it's just like a bugged season. It's not really. It's not bugs, but it's broken. And those are my thoughts on Shadowlands. As far as the Covenants go, I know you've all been waiting for it. You really want me to say which one I think is going to be best right now, but I'm not going to. Because, who knows? Borrowed powered systems are so subject to change and so required for you to do experimentation and theory and practice. I'm not going to be a fool who somehow thinks that I know which Covenant is going to be the best. Just like people got all the Essences wrong. I told that story a million times. I even told it in the Unholy video. I'll do it one more time. Very, very good. Some of the best players in the game. I remember, made a video where Unbound Force was like, oh, it's so overpowered. It's going to be so broken. It does so much on-demand damage. It's like, it's a one-shot potential. It's just too good. That's what I'm going to run. I saw it on stream. Never used once in the entire expansion. Nothing against them. They're still geniuses and great players, but borrowed powered systems are hard to predict. And I'm not going to waste my time or yours giving you some Covenant and then ending up being obviously wrong because you gotta experiment. Things are important to test and practice. Everything in theory is just theory, and people who only look at stuff on paper tend to be wrong. I'm sorry. No, that's not the answer you wanted, but I gave you 2 hours between the Frost and Unholy video of builds that I have one-shot hundreds upon hundreds of people with on stream. Builds that give you an entire set of itemization, an entire rundown of the talents, and all of the different synergies between PvP talents and the new Runeforges and how overpowered Drestigath is. And I gave you a way to get through pre-patch, one-shotting people left and right. I did it with both Frost and Unholy on stream. Can't take that away from it. Until Shadowlands comes out. So I gave you everything that I could, but I can't tell you what Covenant's going to be best yet. Stay tuned for the Shadowlands videos. And if somehow you watched both of these and got through to the end without wanting to slap me for talking too much, you are a superhuman, and you're going to have to tell me how you did that. But that's all I got for these videos, guys. And come check out my stream if you want to ask me any more questions. I'll be there. Thanks a lot, and peace.